Alcinous, king and admiration of men, how beautiful this is, to hear a minstrel gifted as yours. A god he might be singing, but now you wish to know my cause for sorrow, and thereby give me cause for more. What shall I say first? What shall I keep until the end? The gods have tried me in 1,000 ways, but first, my name, let that be known to you. I am Laertes' son, Odysseus. Men hold me formidable for guile in peace and war. This fame has gone abroad to the sky's rim. My home is on the peaked sea mark of Ithaca under mountain Ion's wind-blown robe of leaves. I shall not see on earth a place more dear. Though I have been detained long by Calypso, loveliest among goddesses, who held me in her smooth caves to be her heart's desire. What of my sailing then from Troy? What of those years of rough adventure weathered under Zeus? The wind that carried west from Ilion brought me to Ismaros, strong point in the Coconies. I stormed that place and killed the men who fought. Plunder we took, and we enslaved the women to make division, equal shares to all, but on the spot I told them back, and quickly out to sea again. My men were mutinous fools on stores of wine. Sheep after sheep they butchered by the surf, and shambling cattle feasting, while the fugitives went inland running to call arms to the main forces. There was an army trained to fight on horseback or on foot, and they came with dawn over the terrain like the leaves and blades of spring. Soon doom appeared to us. My men stood up and made a fight of it. But when the sun passed towards unyoking time, then the Achaeans one by one gave way. 6 benches were left empty in every ship. That evening when we pulled away from death, and this new grief we bore with us to sea. Our precious lives we had, but not our friends. Now Zeus, the lord of cloud, roused in the north a storm against our ships. We saw death in that storm and pulled for the nearest lee. Then 2 long days and nights we lay offshore, worn out and sick at heart, until the 3rd dawn came. Then we put up our masts, hauled sail, and rested, letting the steersman and the breeze take over. I might have made it safely home that time, but as I came round Malea, the current took me out to sea, and from the north a fresh gale drove me on past Cythera. 9 days I drifted on the teeming sea, and upon the 10th we came to the coastline of the lotus eaters, who live upon that flower. We landed there to take on water. I sent 2 picked men out and a runner to learn what race of men that land sustained. They fell in soon enough with the lotus eaters, who showed no will to do us harm, only offering the sweet lotus to our friends. But those who ate this honeyed plant, the lotus, never cared to report nor to return. They longed to stay forever, browsing on that native bloom, forgetting of their homeland. I drove them, all 3 wailing to the ships, tied them down under the rowing benches, and we moved out again on our seafaring. In the next land, we found the Cyclops. Giant louts without a law to bless them. Across the wide bay from the mainland there lies a desert island, not far out, but still not close inshore. Here we made harbor. We disembarked where the low ripple broke, and there on the beach we lay and slept till morning. When dawn spread out her fingertips of rose, we turned out marveling to tour the isle. I called my men together and made a speech to them. Friends, the rest of you stand by. I'll make the crossing in my own ship with my own company, find out what the mainland natives are. At this, I went aboard, and gave the word to cast off by the stern. As we rowed on, we saw a cavern yawning above the water. A prodigious man slept in this cave alone, and took his flocks to graze afield, remote from all companions, knowing none but savage ways, a brute so huge he seemed no man at all of those who eat good wheaten bread, but he seemed rather a shaggy mountain reared in solitude. We beached there, and I told the crew to stand by and keep watch over the ship. As for myself, I took my 12 best fighters and went ahead. I had a goat skin full of wine I brought along, and victuals in a bag. We climbed then briskly to the cave, but we looked around at everything inside. A trying rack that sagged with cheeses, pens crowded with lambs and kids. My men came pressing around me, pleading, "Why not take these cheeses? Get them stowed. Come back, throw all the pens, and make a run for it. We'll drive the kids and lambs aboard. We say put out again and on good salt water." Oh, how sound that was. Yet I refused. I wished to see the caveman, what he had to offer. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, and took some cheese to eat, then sat in silence around the embers waiting. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. He dumped it with a loud crash into that hollow cave, and we all scattered fast to the far wall. He swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. 24 four-wheeled wagons could not have stirred the tongue of that rock from where he wedged it over the door-sill. Next, he took his seat and milked his bleeding ewes. A practiced job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling. Thickened his milk then into curds and whey, sieved out the curds to drip into wethy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls, cooling until he drank it for supper. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood. In the glare, he saw us. "Strangers, who are you, and where from?" We felt pressure in our hearts, in dread of that deep rumble and that mighty man. But all the same I spoke up in reply. "We are from Troy, Achaeans, blown off course by shifting gales on the great South Sea, homeward bound, so the will of Zeus would have it. It was our luck to come here, and here we stand beholden for your help or any gifts you give, as custom is to honor strangers. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the gods' courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest." He answered this from his brute chest, unmoved. "You are a ninny, or else you come from the other end of nowhere, telling me, mind the gods. We Cyclopes care not for a whistle for your thundering Zeus, or all the gods in bliss. We have more force by far. I would not let you go for fear of Zeus, you or your friends, unless I had a whim to. Tell me, where was it now you left your ship?" He thought he'd find out, but I saw through this and answered with a ready lie. "My ship? Poseidon, Lord who sets the earth a-tremble, broke it up at the rocks at Land's End. We are survivors, these good men and I." Neither reply nor pity came from him. But in one stride he clutched at my companions, and caught two in his hands like squirming puppies to beat their brains out, spattering the floor. Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion, everything, innards, flesh, and marrow bones. We cried aloud, lifting our hands to Zeus, powerless, looking on at this, appalled, but Cyclops went on filling up his belly with man-flesh and great gulps of whey, then lay down like a mast among his sheep. My heart beat high now at the chance of action, and drawing the sharp sword from my hip, I went along his flank to stab him where the midriff holds the liver. I had touched the spot when sudden fear stayed me. If I killed him, we'd perish there as well, for we could never move his ponderous doorway slab aside. So we were left to groan and wait for morning. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose lit up the world, the Cyclops built a fire and milked his handsome ewes. Then, his chores being all dispatched, he caught another brace of men to make his breakfast, and whisked away his great door slab to let his sheep go through. But he, behind, reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. There was a din of whistling as the Cyclops rounded his flock to higher ground. Then, stillness. And now I pondered how to hurt him worse. If but Athena granted what I prayed for, here are the means, and I thought would serve my turn. A club or staff lay there among the fold, an olive tree, felled green and left to season for Cyclops' hand, and it was like a mast, a lugger of 20 oars, broad in the beam a deep sea-going craft might carry, so long, so big around it seemed. Now I chopped a 6-foot section of this pole, and set it down before my men, who scraped it, and when they had it smooth, I hewed again to make a stake with pointed end. I held this in the fire's heart and turned it, tightening it, then hid it well back in the cavern under one of the dung piles in profusion there. At evening came the shepherd with his flock, his woolly flock. He hefted his great boulder into place, and sat him down to milk the bleating ewes with proper order, and swiftly ran through all his evening chores. Then he caught 2 more men, and feasted on them. My moment was at hand, and I went forward holding an ivy bowl of my dark drink, looking up, saying, "Cyclops, try some wine. Here's liquor to wash down your scraps of men. Taste it and see the kind of drink we carried under our planks. I meant it for an offering if you would help us home, but you are mad, unbearable, a bloody monster. After this will any other traveler come to see you?" He seized and drained the bowl, and it went down so fiery and smooth he called for more. "Give me another, thank you kindly. Tell me, how are you called? I'll make a gift will please you. Even Cyclopses know the wine grapes grow out of grassland and loam in heaven's rain, but here's a bit of nectar and ambrosia." 3 bowls I brought him, and he poured them down. I saw the fuddle and flush come over him. Then I sang out in cordial tones, "Cyclops, you ask my honorable name? Remember the gift you promised me, and I shall tell you. My name is Nobody. Mother, father, and friends, everybody calls me Nobody." And he said, "Nobody's my meat then after I eat his friends. Others come first. There's a noble gift now." Even as he spoke, he reeled and trembled backwards, his great head lolling to one side, and sleep took him like any creature. Drunk, hiccuping, he dribbled streams of liquor and bits of men. Now, by the gods, I drove my big handspike deep in the embers, charring it again, and cheered my men along battle talk to keep their courage up, no quitting now. The pike of olive reddened and glowed as if it were about to catch. I drew it from the coals, and my 4 fellows gave me a hand, lugging it near the Cyclops as more than natural force nerved them. Straight forward they sprinted, lifted it, and rammed it deep in the crater eye, and I leaned on it, turning it as a shipwright turns a drill in planking. having men below to swing the two-handled strap that spins it in the groove. So with our brand we bored that great eye socket, while the blood ran out, and around the red-hot bar, eyelid and lash were seared, the pierced ball hissing, broiling, and the roots popped. The Cyclops bellowed, and the rocks roared around him, and we fell back in fear. Clawing at his face, he tugged the bloody spike out of his eye, threw it away, and his wild hands went groping. Then he set up a howl for Cyclops, who lived in caves on windy peaks nearby. Some heard him, and they came by.
"What ails you, Polyphemus? Why do you cry so sore in the starry night? Sure, no man's driving off your flock. No man has tricked you, ruined you."
Out of the cave the mammoth Polyphemus roared and answered, "Nobody! Nobody has tricked me! Nobody has ruined me!" To this rough shout they made a sage reply.
"Oh, well, if nobody has played you foul, there in your lonely bed we are no use in pain. Let it be your father, Lord Poseidon, to whom you pray."
So saying, they trailed away. Now Cyclops, wheezing as the pain came on him, fumbled to wrench away the great doorstone and squatted in the breach with arms thrown wide for any silly beast or man who bolted, hoping somehow I might be such a fool. But I kept thinking how to win the game. Death sat there, huge. How should we slip away? I drew on all my wits, ran through tactics, reasoning as a man will for dear life, until a trick came. The Cyclops rams were handsome, fat with heavy fleeces. 3 abreast, I tied them silently together, then slung a man under each middle one, to ride there safely, shielded on the left and right, so 3 sheep could convey each man. I took the woolliest ram, the choice of the flock, and hung myself under his kinky belly, pulled up tight with fingers twisted deep. So, breathing hard, we waited until morning. When dawn spread out her fingertips of rose, the rams began to stir, moving for pasture. Blinded and sick with pain from his head wound, the master stroked each ram, then let it pass. But my men riding on the pectoral fleece, the giant's blind hands blundering, never found. Last of them all my ram, the leader, came, weighted by wool and me with my meditations. The Cyclops patted him, and then he said,
"Sweet cousin ram, why lag behind the rest in the night cave? Why now so far behind? Can you be grieving over your master's eye? That carrion rogue and his accursed companions burnt it out when he had conquered all my wits with wine. Nobody will get out alive, I swear."
He sent us into the open then. Close by I dropped and rolled clear of the ram's belly, going this way and that to untie the men. With many glances back, I drove them to where the good ships lay. We saw as we came near our fellows' faces shining. Then we saw them turn to grief, tallying those who had not fled from death. I hushed them, jerked head and eyebrows up, and in a low voice told them, "Load, load, move fast, and put the ship's head toward the breakers." They all pitched in at loading, then embarked and struck their oars into the sea. Far out, as far offshore as shouted words would carry, I sent a few back to my adversary. "Cyclops! Would you feast on my companions? Puny am I in the caveman's hands. How do you like the beating we gave you, you damned cannibal, eater of guests under your roof? Zeus and the gods have paid you." The blind thing, in his doubled fury, broke a hilltop in his hands and heaved it after us. Ahead of our black prow it struck and sank, whelmed in a spuming geyser, a giant wave that washed the ship stern foremost back to shore. I stood with furious nods to all to put their backs into a racing stroke. Row, row, or perish! Now when I cupped my hands, I heard the crew in their low voices protesting. "God's sake, Captain, why bait the beast again? Let him alone! That tidal wave he made on the first throw all but beached us. Give him our bearing with your trumpeting. He'll get the range and lob a boulder." I would not heed them, though, in my glorying spirit, but let my anger flare and yelled, "Cyclops! If ever mortal man inquire how you were put to shame and blinded, tell him Odysseus, the raider of cities, took your eye, Laertes' son, whose home is on Ithaca." At this the Cyclops gave a mighty sob and rumbled, and at this he stretched his hands out in his darkness towards the sky of stars and prayed to his father Poseidon.
"Oh, hear me, Lord, blue girdler of the islands. If I am thine indeed, and thou art my father, grant that Odysseus, raider of cities, never see his home."
In these words he prayed, and the god heard him. Now he laid hands on a bigger stone, and wheeled around, titanic for the cast, and let it fly in the black-prowed vessel's track. But it fell short, just aft the steering oar, and whelming seas rose giant above the stone to bear us onward toward the island. As we ran in, we saw the squadron waiting, and all our troubled friends who waited looking seaward. We beached her grinding keel in the soft sand and waded in ourselves on the sandy beach. I burnt long thigh bones to Zeus beyond the storm cloud, Kronos' son who rules the world. But Zeus disdained my offering. Destruction for my ships he had in store, and death for those who sailed them, my companions. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose touched the world, I roused the men, gave orders to man the ships, cast off the mooring lines, and filling in to sit beside the rowlocks, oarsmen in line dipped oars into the gray sea. So we moved out, sad in the vast offering, having our precious lives, but not our friends.